Welcome everyone to our Cisco Networking Lab session. Today we're going to review some basic concepts of routing and switching configuration. Now, I've got myself connected to a console port of a switch, and we're going to go through the configuration process of this switch. We're going to talk about how to change the host name, the banner. We're going to talk about how to configure SSH, and a few things more that we have learned so far. So let's go. So as soon as I open my PuTTY, my terminal emulator, once I'm connected through a console port to a console, using a console cable to a console port of a switch, I'm now able to configure the switch. Now the first step is to open our terminal emulator software. And in this case, as you can see, I'm using PuTTY. PuTTY is my choice for this session. Now, in order for me to connect myself to this switch and do the basic switch configuration, I need to select the option that will allow me to do that. I'm going to leave everything else pretty much as default. The only exception here is that I need to change the connection type to serial, and that is because I'm first managing the device for the very first time, and in order to do that, I need to use the serial console cable for me to do the basic initial device configuration. Once we do that, we can click open and a session will be open. As you can see, nothing's going to be on the screen. We actually need to go and click inside the screen and hit enter, and that will just basically show that we are connected to the switch. Now that I'm inside my switch, I can do some very cool things. For example, if I want, I can change the colors of the session, I can change the background, I can change the foreground. In this case, just because I don't like this yellowish thing here, I'm just going to change this color. In order to do that, we can just click under the PuTTY window on the top side of the screen, and we can go change settings. From here, we can go colors, and we can just basically select the foreground and the background color. In this case, I'm just going to change the foreground. I particularly dislike this yellowish color that they give to us, so I'm going to change it to white. I'm also going to change the background because I don't like this sort of black. I actually like one which is actually black, so I'm going to change this. Hit OK, hit apply, and all my config settings will be applied. Now that we're in, we can start doing some basic switch configuration. But before we actually start doing that, let's verify the iOS version. Let's verify the switch model and things like that using a command. Now, I'm currently in privilege exec mode. So from this mode, I can just basically execute the show commands. Just a quick reminder here is that from this mode, we cannot make any configuration changes. In order to do that, we need to go to global configuration. Now that I'm here, I'm just going to show version to verify my device version, my Cisco hardware, which is the C2960, Cisco 2960 Catalyst switch. If I keep going, hitting enter, I'm going to be able to see more information about this device. This device is a 48 port device, as we can clearly see from here. So it's C2960 is the 48 port version, TTL. We can also see that the current iOS version running is this file here, which is just basically version 15.02 of the iOS. We keep going, hitting enter. We'll be able to see more information about this device. Okay, now this is the end of the show version command. A cool, interesting thing about the show version command is that actually allows us to verify the serial number as well of the device that we're interested in. In this case, this is the serial number for this switch. This is extremely useful, especially when we want to claim the warranty, when we want to talk to Cisco about the iOS versions we're running, and things like that. Okay, so let's do the first step. Now that we're doing the basic switch configuration for this switch, the first step we want to take is changing the host name of this switch. Now, it's a very simple step. We just need to make sure we are into global configuration mode. And in order to do that, I need to type it in configure terminal. That's what we're going to do here, configure terminal. But before I actually do this, I'd like to comment on a few things. The first thing is, if we don't remember the commands, but we actually remember how they start, we can use the lazy technician key, which is the tab key. And the cool thing about the tab key is that if there is no other command that matches the beginning of the command that you just typed, the tab key will be able to auto-complete a certain command. So for example, if I just erase a little bit here, and if I just type it in conf, if I hit the tab key, it will actually auto-complete this command because that's the only command that starts with conf. Now, if the command is unique, just as this command here, we just need to start typing the command. We don't actually need to finish typing every single character of the command. The iOS will understand which command we are typing in, and with the tab command, it will just help us auto-complete the command. This is especially useful for those technicians that, the lazy typers, they don't type very fast, and they need to get things done quickly. This is extremely useful command for that. Now, with the terminal, I'll do the same thing here. Start typing ter. If I hit the tab key, it will auto-complete. After that, I can just do the enter key, and that will lead me to the global configuration mode. Now, how do I tell if I'm inside the global configuration mode? The obvious way you can identify you are in global config is because you actually have that information with config in front of the host name. Now, as you can see here, this device has the default host name. The default host name on a switch is obviously just simply switch. The default host name on a router is simply router for obvious reasons. Now we can change this. We just need to type it in the command host name, and then we type a name that we wish to give to this switch. Now I have 3 switches here in my server rack. I want to assign this switch the name switch 1 or SW1. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to type it in SW1, all uppercase, hit enter, and that's all I need to change the host name of the switch. Now, as you can clearly see from the command prompt, my switch host name has been changed from switch to switch SW1. Cool. Now, the next thing that we need to review is the banner. Now, if you want to set a message on this device so that every time someone tries to connect and manage this device, we can set up a host name, a banner, sorry. In this banner is just basically the message that the user will get and will be able to see once the user tried to manage this device. Now, in order to set a banner message of the day, it's a very simple command to remember as well. We just need to type it in banner space. If I just use the question mark character, I'll be able to see the options related to that specific command. In this case, we're interested in setting a message of the day banner, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. So I'm going to type it in banner, MOTD, and then I'm going to hit the question mark to see what happens. Now, as we can clearly see here, we need to use a delimiting character. This delimiting character can be pretty much everything. It has to be in the beginning of the statement and also at the end of the statement. So what I usually like to do is use a character that I'm not going to use in the statement. For example, you can use the ampersand sign, you can use the question mark, you can use the percentage sign, not the question mark, sorry. But you can use the percentage sign, you can use the dollar sign, any character that is not going to be used in the statement. Now, I'm going to use the question mark, just not the question mark, sorry, the percentage sign, just because I'm not going to use the percentage sign anywhere else. And I'm going to type it in a message, a very nice message to the user that tries to manage my device. This is a private device, authorized users only. So I'm going to type this message here. Now I need to finish the message with the same delimiting character that I started the statement, in this case the percentage sign. After that, I just need to hit enter, and that's exactly what is going to be configured as the banner message of the day. After that, we can configure a password for the device. Now we're interested in a password for when someone tries to go from the exec mode to the privileged exec mode. And this type of password is called the enable password. We can create this password with the command enable password. Very simple. All right. Now, if I type it in enable and use the question mark to help me out, I'll see that I'm actually able to do a password and also a secret. Now, the difference between these two is that secret will be automatically encrypted. In contrast, the password will not be encrypted. Now, for example, if we configure this device to have an enable password instead of an enable secret, and we save the configuration of this device, every time we display the configuration, we'll be able to see the password as it is. And obviously, this is not a good thing. This is not what we want to accomplish here. In order to create a secret, which is a privilege, which is an encrypted password, I just need to type it in secret. After that, it's just a matter of typing in the password that I'm interested in. In this case, I'm going to type it in class. I'm going to hit enter. And this is how we set a secret. Now, this password is the one that is actually required when we go from the exec mode, user exec mode, into the privilege exec mode. In other words, when we hit enable. For example, if I do exit, I'll go back one mode. If I do exit again, I'll go back one more mode. And we'll be able to see that this is just the user mode. Now, in the user mode, as you can clearly see, because I used exit twice, it's like I'm completely leaving the configuration of the device, and I'll be able to see my banner message of the day that I have just configured. Now that I'm in user mode, if I type it in enable, I'm going to be prompted for the password. This password is the password that we have just configured. This is the privilege exec password. In this case, we configure it to be class. I'm going to type it in class again, and that's exactly what happens. Now we are in privilege exec mode. Alrighty. Now, it's usually very important for us to set another type of password, which is the password which is prompted even before the user is able to do anything on the device, even before they are able to type it in enable. Now, when we do this, we need to configure and associate a password to either the console port itself or to the virtual terminal lines, the VTY lines. And this is exactly what we're going to do now. We are going to configure a password for the line console, and we are also going to configure a password for the line VTYs. Now I'm going to go back to config mode, configure terminal, and I'm going to go to the line console. Now, how many line consoles we have available in this device? We just have a single one, which is line console 0. And that's because we just have one console port on this specific device. So I'm going to go line console 0. I'm going to set a password for this line console 0. It's going to be Cisco. And that's everything I need. Now I'm going to issue the command login just in order to be prompted next time before actually needing to reset the device. So I'm going to type it in login so that next time I'll be requested to enter these password. That's all I need. Once I'm done with the password for the line console, I can go back one mode and I can set up a password for the line VTYs as well. How many line VTYs we have? We need to investigate. They all start with 0. I use the question mark to help me out. In this device, we actually have 16 line VTYs. I'm going to type 0 to 15 to configure all of them at once. I'm going to set a password for all of them at once, which is going to be Cisco. And I'm going to set login as well to be requested next time. I'm going to hit exit to go back one mode. And that's everything I need. We have just configured a line console password and a line VTY password on this specific switch. Now, after we do this basic configuration, it's pretty cool to remember that a Cisco device that can be managed usually has a history. And this history can be accessed with the up and down arrow keys. Now we have just typed in a few commands. These few commands, they are actually saved within a cache, the history, and we can access the commands that we have just typed with the up and down arrow keys. For example, if I hit the up arrow key here, I'm going to be able to navigate through the commands that I have just typed. If I do the down arrow key, I'm going to be moving forward on the history. Okay. Now, another cool thing that we have in the Cisco iOS is that we can verify everything that we have just done. We just need to verify everything that is in the running configuration. So if I issue the command show running, it doesn't work because the show running configuration is actually a command which is available in the privilege exec mode. Now, there is one keyword that we can add to any command so that we can execute any command available into any mode within the global configuration mode, because after all, the global configuration mode is the almighty powerful mode. You are supposed to be able to do anything you want. Now, from the global configuration mode, I can just type it in, do in front of the command that I'm interested in, show run, which is an abbreviation for running, and then that will just basically display to me everything which is currently saved in the running configuration of this device. As we can clearly see some interesting things here. The first of them is the iOS version. Second of them is the secret. Now, in this case, we created a secret, and that's why we can clearly see that there's like some encryption going on over here. Now, I can keep hitting enter to see what's going on. Now, we can see the interfaces as well. So everything that we have configured on the interface will be displayed here as well. We can keep going. And now we're basically able to see everything we have configured so far. So we can configure a password for the console, we configure a password for the line VTYs, and for the enable. Now, this is not a cool thing because if you can clearly see this, this is actually the password that I configured as it is. So it's not cool to have these passwords in here as it is. And there's actually a way around this, which is basically encrypting every single password configured on this device. And in order to do that, I need to use a different command. This command is called the service password encryption command. Now, I need to issue this command from the global configuration mode. It's a very simple way to do this. Just need to go and type it in, service password encryption. And that will just basically encrypt every single password that I have configured. Now, if I do the show running one more time, and I keep going down, now, yep, that was a bit too much. Yep. Now we can clearly see that the passwords that we have configured on both the line console and the line VTYs, they are now encrypted, which is way more secure than before. Alrighty, cool. Now let's talk about these device. Now we discussed this before in our first lecture, and that is basically that a device will save the running configuration within the RAM, the random access memory. If we can recall what the RAM is from our hardware basic lectures, the RAM is just basically a memory in our device which is volatile. It just basically means that if we lose power to the device, if we turn the device off, everything will be gone. Okay? That is because of the nature of the RAM, the random access memory. Now, we can actually save the configuration that we have just done into something more permanent, and that would be saving it into the NVRAM. Now, in order to save the running config into the NVRAM, we basically need to issue the command copy running configuration, running config into startup config. And this command will just basically do the following. It will take everything in the running configuration and will just save it into the startup config. In other words, it will take everything from the RAM and save into NVRAM. NVRAM stands for non-volatile RAM, and it's just basically a RAM that is not going to be affected after the device power cycles. So I'm just going to hit enter, and I cannot do this command from the global config. I need to force it, so I just need the do in front of the command because this command is originally from the privilege exec mode. I'm going to hit enter now that I added the do. It's going to ask the destination file name. I'm going to keep it as it is. Hit enter. And that's everything we need to do in order to save all of this device configuration into the startup config. Now I'm pretty much safe. If I reset this device, the config that I've done will be on the device. Okay, so there's no need to worry on losing anything. The config will be saved. Alrighty, cool. Now, there's actually a better way of doing this copy run start. I particularly dislike this copy command. That is because if we invert the startup for the running, we're actually going to be doing the opposite. We're going to be losing a lot of stuff. And that's not what I want to accomplish here. Now, there is an equivalent command for this copy run start, which is much simpler. And this command is the write command. The write command is for the privilege exec mode. In order for me to run it from here, from the global configuration, I need the do. So as long as I type it in do write or simply do WR, everything from my running configuration will be saved into my startup config. Just basically the same consequences as the copy run startup config command. Okay, cool. Now let's talk about how do we actually erase this startup config. Now, if for some reason we actually want to reset the device to default settings, we just basically want to get rid of every single thing that we configured on the device. And in order to do that, we just need to erase the startup config. It's a very simple process to do it. The command is from the privilege exec mode. So I'm going to go back one mode and I'm going to type it in erase. Erase question mark, and we see all the options that we have to erase this device. Now, because we want to erase the NVRAM or everything that is saved in the non-volatile RAM of this device, I'm going to type it in erase startup config. And this will just basically erase everything in the device. All right. Now, if I just basically power cycles this device, because I have erased all the contents of the NVRAM, the device will just basically boot with the factory settings. So basically without anything that I have just done. This is obviously not what we want to achieve here. And that's why I'm going to save it again with the write command or simply WR. Cool. Now, this switch needs to be managed remotely. Of course, we're never going to have the console cable with us all the time. And most of the time, we're actually not going to have access to every single device to be able to plug it in a console cable into it. So we're not basically going to be able to use the console port. Now, in order to be able to manage this device remotely, this switch in this case, we need to assign it a switch virtual interface that we discussed previously. And in order to do that, I just basically need to create a virtual VLAN interface on this device. In order to do that, I need to be in global config mode. So I'm going to go global config terminal. And from here, I'm going to create a virtual VLAN interface. Now I'm going to use the virtual VLAN interface number 1 just as an example. I'm going to type it in interface VLAN 1. I'm going to hit enter, and this will just basically create a virtual interface called VLAN 1. Now in this interface, I'm able to assign an IP address, and this is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to assign an IP address with the command IP address 192.168.1.1, and this is going to be a /24 network 255.255.255.0. Hit enter. From here, I'm also going to do a no shutdown just in case to bring the interface up, and then I'm going to go exit. From here, we are actually able to verify what we have just done. Now, to verify the interface configuration, we can issue the command show IP interface brief. Now, because we are in global config, we need to force the command. So we need the do keyword to show IP interface brief. And that will just basically display all the information about the interface itself. Alrighty, and we can see that our VLAN 1 has been configured with the IP address 192.168.1.1. Okay, now after this, we need to configure SSH because of course we don't want to remotely connect into a device without making sure we have encryption. Otherwise, people will be able to intercept our passwords to just basically hack our device, and we don't want that to happen. Now, in order to fix this, we need to configure SSH. The first step to configure SSH is to verify the version of the device. We just checked already. This is a device that supports encryption. It's a K9 iOS, so we are pretty much safe. Now we need to make sure we have changed the host name. This is exactly what we did in our first step. After that, we need to assign this device into an IP domain, and it's very easy to do that. We just need to type in IP domain name and specify a domain name. In this case, I'm just going to set it up to be ccna.com. Hit enter, and now we need to create the crypto keys. In other words, the cryptographic algorithm key, and we can do that with the command crypto key generate RSA. Hit enter, and it's just basically going to ask us the length of this key. Now, the bigger the length, the better it is. We can see that we can provide a value between 360 to 4096. Now, every time I'm performing this in a lab, I like to assign the key 1024. It's like an average key. Now, if we're doing this in real life, it would be better if we can assign at least 2000, just in case, to be safer, to make sure this is harder to crack. Now, just for the sake of this lab, I'm going to configure this crypto key to be 1024. I'm going to hit enter. As we can see, it's generating the keys. Now, the bigger the length of the key, it actually takes way more time to generate the keys. Now that the keys have been generated, we basically need to configure username password for SSH to work. And I'm going to do that by creating a username, Robert. And I'm going to give it a secret because I don't like passwords. And the secret is going to be Cisco. I'm going to hit enter. And now I have just configured a username, Robert. And the key, the password is Cisco. It's an encrypted password because I have configured it using the secret keyword. Awesome. Now it's just a matter of changing the transport input into the line VTYs, and then we will change the SSH version to version 2. This is exactly what we'll be doing. So the first step, we need to go back to the line VTYs 0 to 15 to take all the line VTYs available. After that, I'm going to type it in transport input, and I'm going to change it to SSH because the default is telnet. We don't want to use telnet because it's unsecured, it's plain text. So I'm going to hit enter, and now I have just enabled SSH for these line VTYs. Now it's just a matter of specifying that the authentication will be based on the username password, and the way that I do this is just by typing in login local. After that, I can do exit to leave the line VTY configuration, and that's all I need to do to configure SSH. Now we're going to test SSH in a few minutes, but that's all we need to do on our basic switch configuration. I'm going to record the next video, which is going to be about the basic router configuration, and in the end of that video, I'm going to show you how to test SSH, and I'm actually going to SSH into switch 1 from within router 1. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys soon.